In today's video, I'm going to be showing how to make this beautiful crochet heart stitch that's worked in rows. This stitch is not only gorgeous, but it's also super easy to memorize, making it perfect for a relaxing project that works up quickly. Time just flew as I was making this sample and I didn't want to stop. We're going to be using a stitch called 2 double crochets together. So if you're comfortable with single and double crochets, you'll have no problem with this pattern. Plus, I've got a great trick to help you reduce the number of ends to weave in later. So let's just dive in and play some hooky. For this sample, I used a weight 4 cotton yarn with a 4mm hook, but use whatever hook and yarn size you prefer. For row 1, we're going to be making double crochets all the way across. To create our chain, we're going to start with a multiple of 4. Now you'll notice on the screen that I have it broken down as 4 plus 1 plus 3. That's just in case you prefer to do a chainless foundation of double crochets. In that case, you would do a multiple of 4 plus 1. But if you're chaining along with me, start with a multiple of 4. Adding a slip knot to my hook. And chaining using a multiple of 4. If you tend to chain tightly, then I would recommend that you go up a hook size for your chain. That really helps to straighten out your edges. So for my little sample here, I've chained 24. At this point, you can chain 4 more for your turning chain or just start where you are. Working in the 4th chain from the hook, 1, 2, 3, 4, add a double crochet. Important tip here, this turning chain does not count as a stitch. If you want, you can add a stitch marker just to make sure that you don't accidentally add a stitch there. I put it into the top of the stitch that I just made. Continue by adding a double crochet in each chain across. When you come to the end, you should have an odd number of double crochets. For example, I started with a chain of 24 and now I have 21 double crochets. Here's a really important tip before we continue on. This is the front side or the right side of the work. And if you look closely here, the hearts are made where you see the back of the stitches. Notice how they're a lot more bumpy? That's because it's the back side of the stitch. Here is the front side of the hearts. So before we continue on, you need to decide what you want to see on the front side of your work. Do you want them to be with the front of the double crochet? Or do you want it to be the back of the double crochet? I worked it this way because I really like the texture and I think it gives more of the depth and dimension of a heart. But if you prefer the look of this, omit row 2. So stop here and skip to row 3. Now if you want them to be like what I have here with the texture on the front, then continue on with me for row 2. For row 2, we're just going to work single crochets, so chain 1 and turn, and work a single crochet in each stitch across. There's my very last stitch. Adding a single crochet. And now the fun begins. We're going to start making our hearts. To do that, we're going to actually fasten on at the beginning of the row. We are not joining in where we just left off. We're going all the way to the beginning to fasten on. And that's true for both versions. So if you skipped ahead and you did not do the single crochets, you're still going to go and start on the opposite end of where you left off. We're doing it this way because that ensures that we can keep using the same base color. We're just going to carry it along on the sides so we don't have to keep fastening on and off. Now, unfortunately, I wasn't able to find a really smooth way that I could do that with the heart rows too. You may be able to figure out a way that you can do that, but for me, I had to make a choice. Either carry the color of the base color all the way up or the heart color all the way up. And so I chose the base color. To work our hearts, we're going to be doing 2 double crochets together. And so for our very first side, technically we're doing half of a heart. To begin with 2 double crochets together like that, you would have to use a standing double crochet. Now that can be a bit fiddly to work with, so I have an easier way that we can get started. But if you are interested in learning how to do standing stitches, I'll go ahead and add a link here so you can learn more about it. But today we're keeping things simple and light, and what I'm going to show you looks just as good in my opinion, and looks very similar to 2 double crochets together. So adding a slip knot to your hook. Find your very first stitch. Remember, we're not joining on the same side as the active yarn. Fasten on however you like best and chain 2. Next, add a double crochet into the same stitch. Now by doing it this way, it gives the illusion of 2 double crochets together because you have 1 stitch sitting on the top. That's what we want. I'd recommend that you add a stitch marker there, chain 2, skip 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, and then in the 4th stitch, we're going to do 2 double crochets together. So we're going to begin our double crochet like we normally would. Yarn over, 1, 2, 3, 4, go into the stitch, pull the yarn through, yarn over, pull through 2, and stop. We're going to go back into the same stitch, starting another double crochet. Yarn over, going back into the same stitch, pull the yarn through, yarn over, pull through 2. You'll see 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, and pull through all 3 loops. Chain 1, and now we're doing the same thing again in the same stitch. We're doing the other half of the heart. Yarn over, going into the same stitch, pull the yarn through, yarn over, pull through 2. Let's do that again. Yarn over, going into the stitch, pull the yarn through, yarn over, pull through 2, 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. And that's your first full heart completed. We're just going to repeat this all the way across. Chain 2, skip 3, 1, 2, 3, work 2 together in the following stitch, three loops on the hook, pull through all 3, chain 1, yarn over, go into the stitch, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, go into the stitch, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. Chain 2, skip 3, 1, 2, 3, heart. When you come to the end, you should see 4 remaining stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4. Perfect. Chain 2 like you normally would. But here we're going to do just half of a heart, so it's just 1 set of 2 doubles together. So just do your 2 together. And at this point, when you have 3 loops on your hook, you can bring in your base color and pull the loop through, or you can do it after you've completed the stitch, completely up to you. If you want to do it now, bring in your new color, or your base color, I should say. Pull it through. On the other hand, if you complete the stitch, you can still join on the side as well. Remove the hook from your yarn. Go into the 3 loops on the side here. Grab your base color and pull that through the side. pull on the old color, chain 1 and turn. And then I chain 1 more to give myself a little bit of wiggle room. And now we're going to be filling in the gaps between the hearts. Very simple. Just remember, you're always doing a chain 1 between each stitch that you make. So I'm going to do a single crochet, chain 1. Next, we're going to add a double crochet into the row below the heart stitch row. For me, that's a single crochet row. For you, it might be double crochets. We have 3 stitches available. 1, 2, 3, number 2, middle one. Pull your yarn through and create a double crochet. Chain 1 and add a single crochet into the chain 1 of the heart. Chain 1, add a double crochet into the middle stitch from the row below the heart stitch. Chain 1, single into the chain 1 space of your heart. Chain 1, double into the row below the heart stitch. Chain 1, single, chain 1, double. Chain 1, single, chain 1, double. Chain 1 and single in the very last stitch. Perfect. Chain 1 and turn. And now we're going to add a single crochet in each stitch across. Okay, so add a single crochet into the top of the very first stitch, a single around that chain 1 space, a single into the double. And if you're not quite sure where to put your stitch or your hook, look for the bump, that back bar of the back side of the stitch, right next to it, single. There's a chain, single, single above the heart. Remember, we did a chain 1 space between every stitch, so you're going to add a single into those chain 1 spaces. Make sure you catch both stitches of that double. And if you want to double check on your stitch count, it will be the same number that you started off with. So for example, my sample started with a stitch count of 21. So by the time I'm done with this, I will have 21 singles. Phew, I do. Okay, great. Now we are ready for another heart row. Remember, we're starting on the opposite side of the active yarn. We're leaving that for now. Coming over to the opposite side, fasten on however you like best into the very first stitch. Chain 2 and double crochet into the same stitch. Chain 2, skip 3, 1, 2, 3, add your heart in the following stitch. Remember, we're doing 2 double crochets together. Chain 1, 2 double crochets together. Chain 2, 4 remaining stitches, half of a heart in the final stitch. Remember, that's just 2 doubles together. And now it's time to rejoin your base color. Use the method that you prefer of the 2 that I showed you. Chain 1 and turn. I like to do an extra chain just for some wiggle room, but not necessary. Single crochet into the first stitch, chain 1, double into the middle stitch, chain 1, single, chain 1, double, chain 1, single, chain 1, double, all the way across. Don't forget that last chain 1 before that final single. Chain 1 and turn, single into the first stitch, single into the chain 1 space, single into the stitch, single into the chain 1 space, single into the stitch, single in the chain 1 space, all the way across. And you're just going to repeat those same 3 rows over and over until you complete your project. And then what I like to do for my very final row is another row of double crochets to match the base. I'm going to chain 1 and turn. Do whatever you like best for your very first double crochet. You can do the chain 2 with a double crochet. That still works really well. But I like to do stacked singles. So I'm doing a single crochet, working into the sidebar of the single I just made, create another single crochet, and that's my double. And then I'm just going to continue on with doubles all the way across. Now obviously we have some raw edges on the sides that we need to take care of. The best solution for that is a round or 2 of single crochets, and then you can add a pretty border on top of that if you like. I do have a video all about some tips and tricks on how to do your single crochet foundation border that I'll go ahead and link to here, but I'll just show you quite briefly how I would handle this. For my corners, I'm going to add a single, chain 1, single. So I'm just going to find a spot here. There's my first single, adding a stitch marker because I have a tendency to lose these stitches when I'm working in the round like this. So that's my very first one. Chain 1 for my corner, and then another single to complete my corner. So essentially I've already done 1 single in this corner already that counts for this side. I like to do 2 doubles per double crochet, so I'm going to add a single here. I'm just going to work this, making it as neat as possible. And that video I just mentioned will explain a little bit more in depth of how I'm choosing where to put my single crochets. Now making my corner, 1 single, chain 1, 1 single. To help me with this side, I'm going to count how many stitches I used on this side. Then back to the original single crochet, adding a slip stitch to complete. One thing you can do also, if you don't like the look of that slip stitch, come back to the very last stitch that you made. Go into the very first stitch, and then the back loop only of the very last stitch that you made, and then it will look more in line with everything else. And then you would just weave that in however you like best. Being very careful not to pull too tight or that stitch will disappear. For the original sample, I did do 2 rounds of single crochets, but for this is all you need to go ahead and add a more decorative edging around your blanket. Just do a round of single crochets and then you'll be ready to go. Hey, this is Future Roz. I'm in the middle of editing and I just wanted to show you a quick tip, something I missed while I was doing the tutorial. I couldn't understand when I was finished and I was looking at this why it didn't look the same. It looked more messy on the sides here than it looked when I was making the sample. When you start the row where you're doing your single crochets, instead of just doing a single crochet around the chain 1 space, also go around the chain 2 from the heart stitch below. That way it will pull it up and make it look a lot better. It's not perfect, but it does make it look a lot cleaner than what you see here. Now, if you'd like to learn how to do a heart style granny square, this is really beautiful if you put it into the center of maybe a granny square blanket, for example. I think you're really going to love this video.